Yesterday we saw about the semi-empirical methods in which we saw how much approximation we can do. The advantage of semi-empirical methods is you can use large molecules like polymers and even biomolecules. But with ab initio methods, we cannot use such things because ab initio means from the beginning. So let me share the screen and teach you what the ab initio means and how much useful it is in the present days. So I'll share the screen. Let us begin with this one. Right, here it is. So ab initio means from the beginning. It means like that. Okay. Now it uses a full quantum method. Full quantum method. So you must be aware of the Schrodinger equation. Whatever you have studied in Schrodinger chemistry is converted into software. So you don't have to worry. It will be just a kind of package. And the constants that you use are only experimental fundamental constants. Note that previous database is very much important there. So everything that is kept in record is being used up there. And then this gives a very accurate results. Like for example, dipole moment, it can give very good dipole moment and it can give very good polarizability. And apart from that, it can give very good charges. Okay, so you can calculate, there are so many charges. No, can you name a few? I can name a few. Mulliken charges are there. Load-in charges are there. Gas-Steger charges are there. Hirschfeld charges are there. Hirschfeld. NBO charges are there, natural bond orbital. And one more is there, I think. It is used in Coleman charges are there. Okay, these are the charges that are calculated for the electrons. We know only one charge, electron charge is 1.603, that the minus charge mattada namak theriyum, right? But look at these charges: Mulliken, Loudin, Gas-Steger, Hirschfeld, NBO, MK, MKP, Nernst-Kelman potential, electrostatic potential. There are so many charges. Why do they require these charges? These charges are dependent on the type of usage and the type of application that is there. So I have found that this NBO is very useful. That is natural bond order. Okay, to improve your knowledge of chemistry, this is actually the advanced chemistry. While we limit ourselves with only one charge, Newton charge, Mulliken charge, Loudin charge, all those things, are something which is very extra and which gives you some very good knowledge about those things. Okay, so it can calculate very accurately the charges, and it can include all the interactions. For example, core-core repulsion, core electron interaction, valence-valence interaction, valence-core attraction, valence-valence repulsion. These things, actually they define the property of a molecule. If you find anything, why is H2S a gas? H2S is a gas, whereas H2O is water. Okay, so the accurate results can be given by these ab initio methods. And then systematic improvement is possible. That is, today you will do some experiment, find out the results. Tomorrow you can improve the result. Day after tomorrow you can improve the results. And the two disadvantages that are given are, it's very time consuming. Time consuming means, a 8-core processor, 8-core processor for a porphyrin ring system, for a porphyrin ring system at about 16 GB RAM, it runs for 3 days continuously. 3 days the computer will run. It takes up a lot of time, energy, and all those things. Okay, but still it's worth it. You can buy it and see the results there. The next is the relatively small systems. Means you cannot use macromolecules. Okay, macromolecules like biomolecules, which are very large in nature, having a molecular weight of 40,000, 30,000 like that. And then some polymers, in inorganic chemistry, You have polymers and semiconductors that cannot be used very well. At the maximum, you can use a dimer or a trimer. Okay. So beyond that, it takes up a lot of time. So we call it as a. So there is a limit up to 800 Daltons. You can calculate you can calculate very accurate. Dalton, I think you know the name of the scientist, is 1 unit, and it usually refers to a general atomic number. 1 Dalton means for hydrogen it is 1 Dalton, for deuterium it is 2 Dalton, for tritium it is 3 Dalton, like that. So if you have 800 atoms, you can use for the 800 Daltons, right? Now the basis of this is, it's very important that here I would like to suggest the molecular orbital theory. This is about this molecular orbital theory. What is this molecular orbital theory? I think molecular orbital theory is general theory which you have studied in the classes. Okay, like for example, one atomic orbital and another atomic orbital give rise to one MO here, another MO here. Okay, this is 1, this is 2, and this will be 1, this will be 2. So likewise, if you keep on adding 1 plus 1, you have to keep on adding. Okay, so there is a gap between these two, and this gap is what we call it as the highest occupied molecular orbital minus lowest unoccupied molecular orbital, and you call it as the band gap. Okay, now what this computational chemistry does is, that is in the light of that, it is given in terms of the symmetry. It's given in terms of the symmetry. What is a symmetry? See, you have in present day construct, you have S, P, D, and F orbital, right? This is what you say. Nowadays, in the modern chemistry, in the advanced modern chemistry, how we say is an orbital with p symmetry, okay, or an orbital with d symmetry. This is how you say nowadays. You don't say there is p orbital, you don't say there is f orbital. So what does it mean? It means that suppose if I have hydrogen atom, the configuration I have to write as per old method of chemistry is hydrogen 1s1. Okay, or I can take He2 and I will write this hydrogen as, helium as 1s2. But in the present day reactivity pattern, what I am going to do is I will write it as 1s1 and 1p1. Will you accept helium as having a p orbital? No, you won't accept. Or even I can write 1s1, 1d1. Look at this helium orbital having d orbital. While we know d orbital is only for transition metals. D orbital is only for transition metals. We can apply the property. Why we use this? Because at some places helium behaves strangely. The behavior of helium is not according to the laws of chemistry. Its behavior is strange. For example, some electrolyte discharge, helium discharge lamps of that. If the behavior is strange, you have to explore why it is doing so. So when you include the properties of the p orbital or d orbital, you get certain results. Therefore, we treat helium orbital as having helium atoms as having s orbital as well as p orbital as well as d orbital. So if somebody says oxygen atom is having d orbital, is not wrong. It's right. D orbital. Oxygen may have certain amount of time. What is it? It just changes the shape. P orbital shape is like this. D orbital shape is like this. It just changes the shape. When it changes the shape, its reactivity is different. So therefore, I am able to account for the different properties. So that is how what this molecular orbital theory does using quantum chemistry. Very important point. Molecular orbital theory with computer chemistry is assigning the symmetry. Okay, I think you will see how symmetry is assigned in group 3 as well. You will see A1, A2, B1, B2, symmetries like that in your feature. When you come across this symmetry, please make a note of that. So basically, it uses the simple molecular order theory using group theory. Look at what ab initio does. It uses the molecular order theory, it splits the atom. After splitting the atom, it assigns the symmetries of the atoms. So once symmetry is assigned, you will not know whether this particular electron belongs to U orbital or F orbital. For example, if you have D6 case, one of the electron may be belonging to S level, or one of the electron may be belonging to F level, so you will not know. You will lose the parent group. Okay. In the same way as you have uranium-92, the 92nd electron is a valence electron, but the first electron is a core electron. Core electron and valence electron may get changed, may get some new numbers. Okay, so these are the key steps here in the ab initio methods. You have to remember this. I'll enlarge it again. For examination point of view, you have to remember this. Hi equal to E psi is the most basis of the equation. And then you have space-time separation. Space-time separation means, we don't consider time here. Okay, what is it? It is, you consider three coordinates, X, Y, and Z, and then after some amount of time, it gets displaced by means of rotation, vibration, radiation. When it gets displaced, you lose the property. That is the relativity theory. The properties changes over a period of time. So what we do is we attach the fourth dimension as a spin. Fourth dimension as a spin, X, Y, Z, and a spin up or a spin down. You should know what a spin actually means is. So we just separate time from that. If you include time, we call it as the time dependent, but it becomes a time dependent equation. And in the time dependent equation, you can see in the Schrodinger's time dependent equation how the equation becomes very difficult when you have this time dependent equation. All you have to do is dx by dy if you limit it to t in terms of time t. But we remove this, we place it with s so that we start with this. We'll see what happens to this time t in the next case, of the density function theory. That is, time we ignore. Either we include spin or we do not include spin. We go to the some next level called as the non-relativistic Hamiltonian, which is not real. So it is a kind of approximation. It is a kind of approximations. Our quantum chemistry is full of approximation. You cannot deny that. There is no approximation, because we are having so many results in our hand. We are having so many latest things, latest developments. Okay. One such approximation we are going to see is the Born-Oppenheimer approximation, which separates the motion of the electron from the nucleus. It's a very good point. Okay. These are all the points, while we studied MSc, we never know this. It was in the year 1990s when quantum chemistry was not developed. We always thought this Born-Oppenheimer approximation and these kind of approximations are something not very useful. But nowadays, without that, not a single drug is modeled, not a single semiconductor, not a single phone screen, not a single sensor is modeled. Nowadays, we live with sensors. Okay, all these things are modeled by some amount of approximation. We do a lot of approximations, come to the result, come to the conclusion, and finally give the result. Then we have this normalization. You should know what is meant by normalization. Normalization is, to be crude, I am going to say a person, a male person grows up to the age of 10, 12, 13, 14, completes BSc, MSc, and then he is a male, he is married to some female, and then it is called as the normalization. It is a normal process, okay? Or more crudely, I can say, if you have +1, you added it with -1, and then you get the result. Or you can say you have matter and then antimatter. நார்மலைசேஷனுக்கு அதுதான் மீனிங். நாங்க வந்து அது என்னவோ பெருசா இருக்குது மேத்தமெட்டிக்கல் அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு வாட் வி டூ இஸ் வி ஜஸ்ட் இக்னோர் இட். பட் ஆக்சுவலி இட் இஸ் டு அக்கௌண்டபிலிட்டி. அக்கௌண்ட் பண்ணணும். ஏதாவது ஒரு பொருள் இருந்துச்சுன்னா, see if you have nowadays in the mobile, new mobiles are launched, people test mobiles by bending, by breaking, by firing, all those things. Why do they do it? It's a kind of process to find out how much durable it is. You can call it as a normalization process. In the same way, if we define approximation, we will find an anti-property of that and find out how it is able to stand with that. Okay. Now comes the most important point. It is during this normalization, like I told you that we use matter with antimatter, we have to use anti-symmetrization. Suppose if I have an orbital A1, if I multiply it with an opposite orbital with A2, I should be able to get a value of 1. Okay. Usually, if you get, that is, there are possibilities that if you multiply A1 into A2, you can get A1 answer. If you can multiply A1 into A2, you can get A2 as answer. If you multiply A1 into A2, you can get 0 as an answer. These are the 4 possibilities. So these are all possible. I told you you have to look into the matrix determination, determinants and matrix. Now if you get 1 as the answer, it's normalized. If you get 0, it's not normalized. So there are certain determinants which we call it as the Slater and even Huckel. Okay, Huckel determinants. Huckel's method of aromaticity is very famous, right? So people use Huckel aromaticity as well as Slater orbitals to define. It is just nothing but how do you use build a house, build a wall. You can build a wall using mud. You can build a wall using cement. You can build a wall using bricks. You can build a wall using large bricks, hollow bricks. You can build a wall using wood. So it depends on the place where you live. If you are in Iceland, you have to build a wall with ice. If you are in tropical countries, you have to build a wall with bricks. So wherever I want to define a particular property, I want to improve the property, I will have to determine the orbitals. So Slater orbitals have got very good capacity to add polarizing property. Polarizability. Okay. Polarizability means, if you have p orbital, you can treat it as a d orbital also. In some cases, you cannot treat it as a d orbital. So the last one being the molecular orbital, that is the treatment that is given to that particular thing. Okay. So here is the key step in the determination of the molecule. After this molecular orbitals are written, the molecular orbitals written, you can just make a LCO method. LCO stands for linear combination of atomic orbitals. Linear combination of atomic orbitals. How? I think I told you, we just draw this p orbital like this, and you can join them in any way you like, along x-axis, along y-axis, along z-axis, along some other axis. But usually you get very good results if you have a linear combination of all these p orbitals. So it is done in the MOPAC also, that is the semi-empirical methods yesterday I told you. And then you use the variation principle. How variation principle theory is also there. That is, I'll explain basis function in my next slide. Variation principle also you have to study that, but it is already incorporated. You don't need much go into the details. For any antisymmetric normalized wave function, the expectation value of the energy will always be greater than the energy of the exact wave function. That is the assumption that we are going to make. So this point is also, you have to make a note of that. Okay. So in the assumptions part, you will have to use the non-relativistic part. This, I think you don't need to worry about that. But if you go into that, but you can always look into the Born-Oppenheimer. If the nuclear motion is treated as perturbation, what is meant by perturbation? Perturbation means, I told you, the first approximation is taken as real. The first approximation is taken as real, that is called as the perturbation. The appropriate parameter is m power, that is 1 by minus 1 by 4. Even for H nuclear emission, the effects are expected to be very small. However, there are circumstances where the bond upon emission breaks down, crossing electronic states, very high rotation, etc. Okay, so we ignore the nuclear size and we also ignore the nuclear charge. That is the assumption that we are making. And then practical assumptions, what is it that Hamiltonian we are using? H, what is operator H? The wave function is expanded in terms of one electron function, and the wave one particle space is truncated. Space means, you know, it is it's a correction that you make using in the Hamiltonian. The n particle basis is not complete. The n particle space is truncated. That is, if I have 8 electrons, 8 protons, and 8 neutrons, I can omit this 8 proton, because 8 proton I can truncate, because I am not getting the nuclear. It is a nuclear charge we are ignoring. Nuclear charge is ignored. Nuclear charge is ignored, and electron nuclear is accepted. Okay, so you can just take only 8 electron. We ignore this, and we also ignore this also. That is the approximation we are using. And then coming back to the atomic orbitals, this is the if you want to get some accurate marks, you can write the Slater function. That is, we only really have 1 electron orbitals for the H atom. That is the Slater type orbital. Have e power minus zeta r, but no closed for integration. This is the STO and GTO. This is Slater. This is Gaussian. Okay, so the Gaussian and the Slater type orbitals, you can just write the equation. These are the two important factors used in ab initio calculations. And you can integrate this. This is the difference between GTO and STO. Slater type orbital is equal to integrate sigma n equal to 1 to n. All the particles, if you join together, we can just make GTO. But here with STO also you can do an integration. Look at the difference between sigma and integration. It is like, you know, you can have one single box, or you can have a box with multiple layers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 layers. Added them together. The properties of this and the properties of this get varied. But still, we require, wherever layers are required, we will take up the layer there. And wherever the layers are not required, we will just ignore the layers, and therefore, I'm just going to take another picture of this. So here it is. Smallest possible, the basis set is given by the smallest possible number of the atomic orbital. One basis orbital per 2 inertial of electrons, one basis orbital for each valence atomic orbital. Look at this, shell electron, valence atomic orbital. For first 2 row elements, there are basic functions resembling 1s, 2s, 2p, 2z. In fact, basis set means, you know, basis set represents these orbitals, but is a mathematical way. Okay, the STO is replaced by GTO. STO is Slater type orbital. It is there, you have studied. G2A you have not studied. It is not in our quantum chemistry, but it is just a sigma of all the STO, GTO. That in that name only you have this Gaussian software is there. Gaussian mathematical function is there for evaluating necessary integrals. Okay, these basis sets should not be used for any serious calculations, but you can use it only for approximation to describe how the atomic orbitals deform and in the molecule. So that is, in this context, we are going to write the atomic orbitals also. I mean, that is the cylinder type orbital and this is sets that are there. I think you'll need to know what is happening to these basis sets here. This is the most popular basis set that are used by the ab initio sets. 321G, 631G, 6311G. So everything is explained here what it is. You need not have to write, but just to get the conclusion. So what it does there, that's the scaling of the basis set. So if you have one diffuse set like this, another one like this, and resultant will be like this. So it is called as the scaling. Scaling means, during the scaling, you will get the resultant picture. Like we just see hybridization. I think you know hybridization. What is meant by this hybridization? In the hybridization, S plus P gives rise to SP. S will be round like this. P will be like this. It gives rise to a kind of orbital like this. Okay. So here the same thing, but with some kind of polarization function and some kind of mathematical color. Okay. You can see S here, you can see P here, you can see the resultant there. You can see another S P orbital. This is the D orbital, giving rise to a DP orbital. This is called as the polarization function. Polarization means, don't confuse it with some other values. It is deviation from normality. Or neutrality. Okay, I am neutral now, but if somebody gives me some money, I just become polarized and I just talk in favor of that person or any of that particular political party or whatever party it is. But I just become polarized. Okay, I'll just add some more slides and conclude up then there itself. There are this is the polarized basis set that I was telling. In the polarized basis set, you can see that you are adding polarized, valence, double zeta. That is here. Can you see this? Just increase the size. Okay. So 631 is some basis sets, maybe 6 s orbitals, 3 p orbitals, 1 d orbital is being added, and then the p orbital is treated for d and s orbital is treated for p orbital, and then you have got polarized hybridized orbitals. Okay, hybridized. So here I can take hydrogen and I can put 1s1. It is old method. New method is I can take hydrogen, I can treat it as 1p1 and 1d0, or even I can put as 1dp. This is represented by plus sign there. Okay. So if I say hydrogen is having a d orbital, hydrogen behaves like a metal, transition metal, because scandium, titanium, vanadium, manganese, chromium alone, these are the only elements that exist with the d orbitals in nature today. But a hydrogen atom behaving in a d manner, in a metallic manner, is also possible under certain set of conditions, under certain molecular reactivity, under certain changes in the pressure. So I am treating that electron according to that particular basis sets where I just merge two polarized function, where I just merge P and D functions. So these are all the sets of functions that are added there. So you don't have to worry about that. Here is the commonly used basis sets there. Look at this. Number of basis functions for water is STO3G, 321G, 631G. This is a general for benzene. How many sets are there to define the d orbital also? D orbital nature is also there for that. Okay. Okay. So I'll just summarize what we have seen. Ab initio, it actually means from the beginning. Okay, from beginning. What is from beginning? Means, I'm just taking, for example, if I take carbon, I just write the 1s2, 2s2, 2p2 like this. Okay, so I just remove all these barriers. Okay, it is fully 6 electrons, and then each electron repulsion I consider. Okay, each electron proton attraction ignore, and then I treat every electron as having some p orbital property or d orbital property, and I treat every electron as having some mixing property like dp, ps, sb, spd, like that mixing. So I take all those things, and finally I get the accurate results, accurate interactions using Schrodinger's equation. You can go to the first slide and find out that is the final summary of that. So I can stop this because time is running out. I'll stop this. If you have any doubt, you can ask me there. You can ask. Yes?
Sir, doubts?
Yes, please.
Sir, computational chemistry na sir Tamil la கேட்கலாமா?
Computational?
Computational chemistry na எப்படி சார் அது? Chemistry அப்படின்றீங்களா சார்?
ஆமா. So I'm not